Every year, brilliant minds come together for 1 week in the Sonoran Desert to showcase and celebrate the growing innovation, creative, and entrepreneurial ecosystems of the Southwest. Led by Startup Tucson and Ranch House Media, 10 West Impact Festival unites our audiences to gain the knowledge and inspiration they need to make a difference within their own careers and communities. Welcome to 10 West Talks, our podcast where we broadcast the 10 West mission and vision to the world.
This is Matt Mars, today's host of the 10 West podcast, and I am a professor of leadership and innovation at the University of Arizona, and I'm happy to be here today with Robyn Tosik. So Robyn, we have not met before, so maybe we could get to know each other a little bit through our session.
Thank you so much. It's so great to connect with you. I love to connect with new people, especially. It's fun that we have the overlap of University of Arizona. I'm also an advisor and mentor at the McGuire Center for Entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And so that's one of my three main work projects that I work on right now. The other being Savvy Self, which is a coaching and retreats and workshops kind of space where I work with mostly women, but just starting to branch off and work with men, which is awesome. And then I also have a project with O5 Advisors where there's 5 of us advisors and we work with startups, early and mid-sized startups. So.
Cool. Let's go back to Savvy Self.
Yeah.
How does one know if they're savvy? What does that mean?
So to me, my own, so I always think of things when I'm going to put it out in the world as what my thought is on it. It's just my own unique interpretation or what I've come to believe about savviness. And why I've chosen the word actually for 2 of my ventures before. I had Savvy Yogi, that was a coaching business for wellness professionals that knew what they were up to in the world. They had a great purpose, but didn't necessarily have the business acumen. Mm-hmm. And so having worked with them when I was in the corporate world, I saw a niche to help them build their businesses, build and make a living doing what they love. So Savvy Yogi was my first venture in this savvy space. And then the next iteration, Savvy Self, is really helping people that might not know exactly, haven't pinpointed their purpose, and they know that there's some potential in them that hasn't been realized yet. So I help them actually tap into that space first, and so they can be living more on purpose and in that space.
I love that term savvy and the way you threw it out to the world. I do a lot of work with students in particular on agency and self-determination, and oftentimes we associate the concept of grit. Mm-hmm. And while I like the idea of grittiness, it implies barriers and kind of taking your lumps and paying your dues, these kinds of things, where savvy seems much more as though you are in control, or you are really acting intentionally, proactively on your own terms rather than having the strength and persistence to respond. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I love that interpretation, and I think that I tend to be more of an optimist. So I think when I look at challenges as opportunities, and I've always kind of had that mindset. But don't get me wrong, I've had my share of grit, challenges, really difficult jobs and roles that weren't in line with my passion and purpose. And when I wasn't acting as my most savvy self or as my wisest self, I would say, I like savvy because it kind of refers to growth mindset, right?
Yes.
That there's space to keep gathering and collecting and becoming wiser and filling your toolbox and your mindset with more tools that can actually help you along the journey and help others. And I think savviness is not even just about you. It's about tapping into something larger than yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful term, and I'm going to use it if that's okay.
Absolutely.
I'll give you credit. But you mentioned the concept of mindset, and I know you had a chance to talk with folks about that here at 10 West. But I'm wondering if you could maybe just talk a little bit about what is this whole notion of manifestation, and how is that informed by one's mindset or vice versa? And maybe put it in the context of just maybe everyday life. We tend to think about these things in grandiose terms, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But just how does that become part of one's being?
Well, thank you for asking me about that.
Hmm.
It's one of my topics I'm most passionate to learn about, to continue to learn about, and to share my learnings as, teachings, if you will, or just, I'm excited to have a conversation with people about it. So, manifesting, I believe, is a very practical practice.
Okay.
And a lot of people, there's a lot of buzz around there that might make people think otherwise. I think it's just really people don't have a full understanding of how it works. And there's aspects of it, I think, that are being, buzzed about because it's kind of fun. It's fun, the idea of just putting an idea out there and like just energetically hoping it happens.
Mhm.
But I mean, honestly, if you're really going to get serious and see manifestation work in your life in real practical terms, it's really about bringing elements of mindset together. Our subconscious mind is at play 95% of the time.
Mhm.
So it's really directing us through those mindsets. So we're actually filtering and operating most of the time through our subconscious, right? But the conscious mind that we do have control over, and whenever we can bring ourselves into that present moment, into that awareness, we can utilize the conscious mind because the subconscious mind wants to prove the conscious mind right. So that's where our thoughts become our reality, right? So if I think that I'm going to come in and make a big impact when I give this talk today. I'm going to really help people demystify manifesting. I'm going to help them see how it can be practical for them, and that this 45 minutes that they decided to walk in this door and spend with me, when I know it took them a lot of effort to get here today,
Mhm.
that's going to be a useful tool in their progress towards entrepreneurship and their progress in other areas of life, towards relationships, and maybe just having more effort and less effort and more ease and enjoyment on the journey. So it's like thinking of it like that, and just putting it into like taking the woo out of it, even though I love the woo. I'm here for the woo.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. But I didn't start with the woo. I started with the very practical business side, and then I came to love the woo because it got me away from fighting so hard against the universe and trying to force things to happen. Like that's when I hear you talk about grit, or when I hear you talk about, forcing things or making it happen in that way. I feel like, yes, that's definitely a way to do it. I feel like, why not though instead take a step back?
I love that.
I always like to say a bird's eye view. I'm named after a bird, a robin, spelled a little differently, but
Is that true, or
it
are
is.
you manifesting that?
There were 3 names my mom thought of that started with an R, but I came out and I looked like I was like a little chirping bird, she said. So she picked Robin, but she spelled it the female German way, so that has a Y, Robin with a Y.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so I love the bird's eye view. And I always, to get present, and maybe it's like that big picture CEO, whatever view what you want to call it, we operate in this minutia a lot of times in the world, or we get wrapped up in the distractions and the chaos. But if you can get out of that and fly and soar above and see beyond, what's going on in this moment, and reconnect with what's the possibility, how you can be of service and make a greater impact in this life. If you can rise above it all and say, like, I'm not going to get wrapped up in this tornado of trauma and negativity and media and all the things that are getting perpetuated in the information that's coming at us so quickly, it can really drag you down if you let your mindset get, taken over by that, hijacked. So I think getting the bird's eye view first, and then getting really clear on what you want, like truly want, not just what other people want for you, what you think you should do. But I think getting clear on what your goal is has to be deeply connected to your why.
Yes.
You can't actually, I don't think, to truly like set a manifestation statement, to like truly start to set a powerful goal that's going to drive you towards it, that's going to pull you towards it, it has to be rooted in your why.
Yeah, these are
So that's
so
step
many
one.
nuggets in there. It's a couple things that come to mind is one, that notion of grit. is I agree with you 100%. It's exhausting,
Mm-hmm.
and it's more reactive than it is proactive, and so you lose intentionality in that. And the idea of complex organizations, anytime people are involved, it's complex, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that ability to rise above the noise, to really, not fall victim to it, but rather rise above it. So I think that fits with the bird eye view.
Yes.
And the other piece is and this is a fascinating thing at the university. You could talk to those of us that, you know, we make our living doing research, teaching. We presume to have a reason. But if you were to ask us, like, what is your goal? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what's the outcome? What is your big why question or
Mm-hmm.
your wonder? Many of us couldn't answer that.
Yes. And
And
that's,
yeah.
that's why that's the work I'm doing in this world.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's like
And
clarity of intent, right?
yes.
Yes, I
Yes.
love that. And it's so much more empowering to think about it that way and say, like, why? And that keeps you grounded, but with the bird's eye view. So
Right.
we're mixing geographic metaphors, but I think that's super cool. But let's go back to the woo-woo.
Yes.
Or I guess you
Sure.
just said woo,
Yeah.
so I added a woo.
Yeah,
So
no, no, no.
the woo-woo.
I
What does that really mean, and why is that necessarily a bad thing?
I don't think it is necessarily a bad thing. What I think helps though is I appreciate that there's people out there that are living and operating in a space that's maybe, if I'm going to call it woo, it's just more like they just blindly trust and they believe and they just know maybe there's forces at play and maybe they're just more enlightened. I'm not sure, but how I think I can be most impactful as a teacher and a coach is being more of a bridge of understanding and loving to like live in that space of where I can just, meditate all day or just not have any obligations or, just do sometimes I'll do, I call it Freedom Friday and I just don't have any obligation. I can just go where the wind blows me. I can go to this thing and then I can have a conversation with this person. And it just really leaves that space and freedom for possibility. And, also having like a practical jobs and purpose and being of service, I also have to apply myself in this world. So I think it's trying to operate in those two levels, but bring kind of things that are expansive ideas, but break them down into really practical steps so that anyone and everyone can use them and apply them to their lives today. And then as you practice, you can carve out new neural pathways that make those practices easier for you. But if you've never done a mindfulness practice or you've never done manifesting before, or you actually have probably done manifesting, but you never called it that.
Right.
You never articulated it in that way. Or if you've said, I've set up big goals and I've visualized them and I've tried hard and I've done the steps, but I never reached that. I would encourage you to peel back the layers of the onion and say, like, was that original goal that you set? Was that really for you? Was that really driven by what you truly wanted and desired in the world? And was it rooted in a why that's going to keep you motivated? That's it's something you can't not do. That's what I think these big life purposes or these big goals, it's the work you can't not do in the world.
Yes. Have you spent any time thinking about kind of the overused and underdefined term of passion and how this relates to it? So where I'm going with this is often we'll talk to students about find your passion, and then they quickly think of what I believe is a misnomer of do what you love and you'll never work a day,
Right.
Yeah, I've never found that to be the case, but rather that passion is like this disease of the soul. Like it takes you over and you have to surrender yourself to it, and it drives you. It's always present. It's part of who you are. Does that fit at all, that kind of philosophical notion of passion, with this idea of enlightenment and understanding your why and who you are, what you care about?
I think absolutely. I think my perspective is that a lot of times we live segmented lives and we live very compartmentalized. And I can think back to when I was in the corporate world working 80-hour weeks at like my last corporate job, and it was really demanding. And I was also training for marathons and triathlons and doing like these things, but I was doing I was human doing. I was doing all of these things. I was exhausted even for relationships and friendships. And I wasn't fully showing up as my present self for any of them. I was doing a ton of things I was passionate about in ways, but it was all in these different disjointed segments, and it was living for external validation and other things more than being in tune and connected with myself, what I love and value and care about. So, I mean, passions and values and purpose and everything, there's overlaps of all of that. What you're passionate about a lot of times is what is informed by some of your mindsets too. So I think that where you start with all of this and where I started today with my talk is really just having a deeper understanding of what's going on in our brains and how you're operating in the world, right? And so you have to, if you start with mindset and you start with, it's like the glasses you're wearing, you're seeing a different perspective because you're wearing those glasses. So the mindsets that we have are like different pairs of glasses. So you can have different sets of different glasses to put on for different circumstances, right? Maybe you have a relationships mindset. So you have those, right? So those mindsets might have been formed very early. Like most of our mindsets are rooted or formed based on things that happened to us before we were 7 years old, right? So then that is informing the way you behave in the world. And every single person, it's like a fingerprint. We have our own unique set of mindsets. No one in the world has the same mindset. So when you're in a relationship and you think, I'm gonna act this way, and you think, oh, they should act this way because this is how I would do it. And then your partner, you might notice, is in the same situation, they act a completely different way.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they're wrong. It means their mindset is filtering the information that's coming in, and they are translating that in a certain way that's influencing their behavior. So they just have a totally different set of glasses on that sees the world in a different way. And if you start to realize that about every single person in this world, you can start having more compassion, more understanding. And when you work with people and you see and you understand and you actually see them for them and say, like, you must be looking at this differently than I am.
Yeah.
And like, tell me about your experience with solving this problem, because this is my experience and like what I'm thinking. And this is why it's beautiful to collaborate with people. And it's awesome. I love working on teams because if and when you have like a growth mindset, when you're able to take feedback and when you're able to learn from other people, we can just like our potential is limitless.
It is.
Right? And even something you said a little earlier gave me a beautiful new perspective on something. It's like, you talked about rising before you instead of just reacting.
Yes.
And so it's like, oh yeah, rise before you react. So it's like taking yourself out, like, and there's many different ways to say that, but just having this conversation with you is mind expansive for me, and I'll never be the same after this.
Oh, that's a
that I was
beautiful
before.
statement. I love that. And, it also, one thing that comes to mind as you were talking, and now I feel more enlightened, and it's been a topic that I've been thinking a lot about lately, and I think is grossly missing in many organizations, if not in organizations, whether it's a startup or a corporation or a university, whatever it might be, is we say it matters, but we don't practice empathy very often, right? And even when the decision is difficult and we know that it's not going to go in somebody's favor, there's still room for compassion. There's still room for empathy.
Right.
And with empathy comes connection, and with connection comes new opportunities, right?
Right.
But what we find when we talk about empathy, we as a group that are starting to think about this as a project, is that empathy quickly implies softness or weakness. And I'm wondering, when you're doing your work around mindsets, how do you get people to maybe not change their mindset, but change their assumptions, to open their consciousness to what might be possible if they were just to kind of challenge some of these very fundamental principles, like empathy is weakness. A strong leader is someone that, is going to march forward whether someone's with them or not, and it's like, I've heard so many people lately say, it's not about me, or it's not about you, or, it's, I don't care. It's like, how do you not care? Is that really possible? And so these are like some of the bigger questions we're asking. And it seems like the work that you're doing and the concepts that you're weaving together into this beautiful fabric of a different way of seeing and reacting and responding in the world may align with some of this.
I think the most powerful tool we have, like what you're reminding me of, and I think this is such a important conversation because these ideals are so deeply rooted in our society. And I could say this is like some of those problematic issues that just we've been told. This is a mindset. We have a mindset that like being harsh, forcing things, being like, aggressive and driving fear, like leading with fear, and it's not worked. It's not work, and it's definitely not working now. No. Look at the mass, like, people just leaving their jobs and saying like, no, these, I think getting to work with college students has really shown me that I am so inspired and excited by the enlightenment and the mindsets and like the mindsets that are challenging the norms and saying like, no, I don't think we have to, this seems crazy. I mean, I already felt like that when I worked at PepsiCo, and I was working on the same team as a gentleman, a lovely gentleman that had been there 30 years, and he was just waiting, couldn't wait. He was counting the days to his retirement. And lovely, but for me, I'm like, I will never be here for 30 years. I'm like, I'll be lucky, I didn't even last 3. So, but the thing, the reason why I bring that up is that there were so many things that were fundamentally like, kind of red flags are going off. Like, this is not right. This is no way to live. This is not serving my greater purpose. This is like, I have golden handcuffs on. I'm making money.
Yes.
I'm getting the titles that society lied to me. Society said, if I did all these things and worked really hard and got to this point, I would be happy because I could buy all these things. I could do all these things. I could do that. But the truth was, I was busy, I was burnt out, I was not present, and I didn't have time to travel. My husband had to go and plan our wedding, our destination wedding, because I was working so much. So he had to go and plan our destination wedding. And then, that was part of the tipping point that ultimately got me to quit and take a year off and like really chase my passions and purpose around the globe. And, for me, I had to start with passions because I didn't know my purpose. So I think passions can be a path to purpose, but what I've ultimately seen over and over and over is people that surrender to service and some type of service, whatever that translates to in your own life. There's service and purpose are connected. And then there's passions and there's details. There's something involved in there. But if you surrender to, there's a term in yoga, it's seva, and it's selfless service. And after working so hard for so many years and making companies so much money and being so successful by the standards our society judges us on, but being so grossly unhappy and disconnected, and then going and just not really like starting all over and like just teaching yoga and learning yoga and just growth mindset, like starting in a space that I'd never been in before. It was like, wow, it's just, if I start from this place of service, like you said, you'll never work a day in your life. I love what I do. And I would do this, and I've done this part of this work and not get paid for it until I did get paid for it, So it's just, I think you can work yourself into making a living. But I think if you start seeking out the money, I've done this before, so I already made this mistake. If you start seeking out that, you will be a slave to those things, and you will be a slave to things that you don't believe in, and it's disconnect. You will get further and further away from your why potentially. Not saying that you can't have profits or you can't be rich or you can't be wealthy, but if that's your main motivator, then you're missing the why. That's why I say even with manifesting, it's got to start with a goal.
Yes.
And a why. Like, why do you care? Why does it matter?
Right. And that brings that more tangibility to that idea. I love your statement, society lied. I love that. And it's another thing that I'm going to use in my class.
Oh, sure.
When I do mostly work with students on social entrepreneurship, community development, these types of things.
Love that.
And they have some really audacious and ambitious and out of this world creative ideas,
Love that.
all of which I love.
Yes.
And I'm addicted to it.
Yeah.
And we'll have people rotate through to hear their ideas and give feedback. And I vet those people closely, of
Yes.
course. And they share a different perspective with the students than they do with me. And they'll often say, oh, those students are so cute. But their ideas are just so naive. And the real world's going to smack them around. And I've come to a point now where my comment is back to them is maybe they're going to smack the world around a little bit, and I love that idea. It's like, well, society lied to you, so go make it true. It's,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I don't totally blame society, but until we start challenging things
Yes.
that we know aren't working, like when all your red flags are going off and when people are burning out at a rate like never before. And like,
Yeah.
there's so much that says there's so much wrong. And if we
Yeah.
just keep doing things the way we've always done it, or we just are okay with, the status quo,
Yeah.
that's not innovative. Like, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I'm
Yeah.
always innovating. I'm always thinking of different ways to do it. Even when I was working in corporate world, I was an entrepreneur. So it was
Yeah.
like, I could always, like, I ran my own business inside, these organizations. So I had a certain amount of autonomy to be like, yeah, that's what they said. I'm going to go do it this way. And then I would get rewarded for when I was innovative. And that's when I was those were the green flags where I was like, yes.
Oh, I love that.
You know what I mean?
Love
Then
that.
I was
Yeah.
like, I need to find more of those. And so that's why I think it's like these little breadcrumbs to your purpose.
Yeah.
And you might never even find your purpose in this lifetime. But if you're moving towards that purpose, it's going to feel better
Oh, for
and
sure.
better and better. And like when I see you talk about working with the students, I can tell you're living in your purpose. When
Oh.
you're connecting with these students and you're like, yeah. And you want to be like, yeah, go prove them wrong. And like, you want to
Yeah.
see them.
I'm betting on them.
Yeah.
Every time.
Speaking of unicorns, you want to see them being the
Oh, yeah,
unicorns of
for
it, right?
sure.
And you're
And,
like,
yeah.
I'll just be the first one, like, yeah, I told you so.
Without a doubt. Beautiful. And, maybe what we could do is take your riff on society lied to me. Maybe society told you one truth.
Well,
Now
I
you
believed
go
it.
create yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like fool me
Yeah.
once,
Right.
shame on you. Fool me
Right.
twice, shame on me.
Me.
So that's what
That's
it's
right,
just like
yeah.
once you know something,
I love
like I can't go back to those circumstances. It honestly wouldn't matter what amount of money, what amount of circumstance somebody would offer me. I mean, I even tried it. I interviewed for jobs when I came back from my year of world travel. I got 3 job offers, better than I'd ever had before. And I said no because I couldn't imagine myself going back into that space, having done the growth work that I've done in that year, if that makes sense.
It does make total sense. I've had moments in my career where new opportunities were presented, and they were at first exciting, but they were going to take me away from what I get the most out of.
Yeah.
And every decision comes with a trade-off. But at the end of the day, it just didn't feel right. And all the reasons were go for it, but it just didn't feel right. And as I reflect back on that, it was because I was going to lose my energy. I was going to lose my purpose, my sense of why. But at the time, I don't think I always realized that.
Yeah.
But I think as you gain more experience and if you're reflective, you begin to create a stronger awareness, like, oh, that's what I was doing. That's what I was hearing. And that's what I was listening to, even though I didn't know it.
Right.
So that 95% of we don't operate on consciousness is, I think we've kind of taken the woo out of woo-woo already in 20 minutes,
Yeah,
right?
well-
I love it. I am kind of curious as we wrap up our session, one thing that we know, or at least social scientists will tell us, is that as humans, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, change is really hard for us. Like, change is not comfortable for most people. So when you're talking about changing or challenging one's mindset, saying going from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, how do you help people get over that initial hump of, it's going to feel different, it's going to feel a little uncomfortable, it may feel counterproductive? Like, what's your coaching method to that, to get people to make themselves vulnerable to change?
Yeah, I love that question. It's really curiosity about yourself and where your mind, what informed your mindsets and when, and getting clarity on that. Like all the answers are inside you. Like I couldn't tell you what to do. If I told you what to do, even if I knew you pretty well, I wouldn't be giving you great advice. The better thing I can do for you is help ask you more questions and be more curious to help you go deeper within your own consciousness, within your own subconscious, to see what mindsets that you created when you were 0 to 7, that, that are deep, deep rooted, that have informed the way you've operated, the jobs you took, the opportunities you took, the relationships you've been in, all of the things that you've done and all the behaviors and everything, all of that is like I said, those lenses that you've decided to carry on. And I just ask you, which ones are serving you and which ones are not? And you have to get to the root of that. So the work is for you to really analyze your mindsets and notice which ones are really serving you or not. And then you can decide to throw away that pair of glasses. If that one mindset is really not serving you, or maybe you can't go fully from a fixed to a growth mindset, but maybe there's aspects of the fixed mindset that are not serving you. Maybe you want to stay rooted in something.
Yes.
And that's okay. You've got to do it. You have to keep getting like, is this serving me? Is this serving me? Just be curious with yourself. Be curious what's informing your mindsets. And then say, where did I get informed? Was that something I thought of myself, or did somebody give me that label at some point? Did someone tell me I was not good enough? Did someone tell me I was smart? But then I have to always look smart. I always, like a lot of times a fixed mindset is actually just someone protecting whatever label or title they were given by somebody else. So it's not even something you chose for yourself. It's just because they think I'm smart, so I better show up and look smart in every circumstance. And that's so limiting.
It is.
Because then you're not going to take feedback. You're not going to try to learn. You're not going to try to come into a conversation with a brand new person that you've never even talked to. This is our first conversation ever. And I am just like so curious what you're going to ask me because I'm going to learn something from you. And I'm not worried that I'm going to look stupid because I'd far rather look super authentic and messy than look smart and disconnected.
Yes.
Like I'd rather connect with one person on one little nugget than everyone just be like, gosh, she's very articulate and very smart and put together.
Well, I'm not going to give you a label, but I will say you were very smart and articulate and authentic.
Oh, thank you.
So this is fabulous. The one kind of reflection, and then I have a very most important question to end with.
Okay. All right.
But my reflection is the thought of replacing the misnomer of woo with enlightenment. And as you were just talking, it seems to me the path to enlightenment, as we've been framing it in this conversation, is empowerment. Because what I heard you saying is when you're working with people to position them to benefit from the conversation, it's giving them choices. It's giving them options and letting them be at the controls. In a way that is going to direct them in maybe a new direction, but a direction that they crafted for themselves.
Absolutely.
So enlightenment and empowerment, that's the woo-woo.
Yeah,
and
totally.
woo-woo. And so we need to change that narrative.
I love it.
So here's the most important question, and neither is not an answer. Are you a dog person or a cat person?
Absolutely a dog person. I'm kind of allergic to cats.
But there was a wrong answer, and you absolutely nailed it with the correct answer. So with that said, it's been a delight, Robyn, talking with you. And
it's been such a delight.
Yeah, and I can't wait to learn more about your work and collaborate as we move forward. Because, again, this is our very first conversation ever.
I know.
So we've known each other 35 minutes, and the world has changed.
Can I give one last thought? So
please.
I wanted to cap manifesting is not just about creating the strong vision, the strong goal. It's about action, intentional action towards that goal. You have to do it. You have to do the work. You can put the most beautiful vision out there. But what's great about the manifestation is like your subconscious, everything. It's like the universe is conspiring with you. You're manifesting. So it's like you're working with flow. You're working with energy. You're working with the energy of others. And how you can tap into that manifesting mindset is continue to be curious about yourself, continue to be courageous enough to act in the ways and change and shift the mindsets that will serve you best and ultimately serve the world in the best way.
I love that. And I'm afraid that we need about 7 more podcast episodes.
Okay,
because
good.
now
I
want
know.
to say, and after you saying that, I think surely we have to leave room for play and fun in this as well,
Absolutely.
right? So we can work hard, play hard, and really be in the moment. And so I'd love to talk to you about that at another time. So
Okay.
maybe we need like 11 West.
Okay,
Instead of 10 West. So,
Sounds
but
good.
Robyn, this has been a delight, and we
Same.
wish you the best of luck with all your work. And thank you for spending so much time at 10 West and giving back to our community. And can't wait for the next conversation.
Absolutely.
All right, great.
Great to connect.
Let's go innovate.
Yes, absolutely.
10 West Impact Festival is produced by Startup Tucson and Ranch House Media. The 2023 edition is presented by the Arizona Commerce Authority and brought to you by Arizona Arts Live and Pima Community College. The 10 West podcast is made possible by Cloud Microphones. To learn more and view the full list of sponsors and partners, visit 10west.com.